Hello students, good evening. My name is Rohit and today we have to start with the remaining portion of emergency provision. Yesterday we completed the national emergency, effect of national emergency and the reason why we impose President's rule. So today we have to start with the procedure for approval of President's rule, and then after we will start with the revocation and effects of President's rule. So let us start first with the procedure for approval of President's rule. So first we will discuss the procedure for approval of President's rule. So what is the procedure? I think we have already discussed this in the previous class, that suppose we can assume a particular date on which the President's rule will be imposed on a particular state. So let us assume for simplicity that on 1st Jan 2026, the government said this to the president that you impose President rule on this particular state of the country, and it is not necessary for the cabinet to give recommendation. See, the recommendation of cabinet is required only in case of national emergency, not in the case of President's rule or financial emergency. Okay, so here even the prime minister can communicate to the president that you impose President's rule on this state. So suppose on this state, on the advice of government, president imposed President's rule on a particular state. So remember, if President's rule is imposed on this day, then within 2 months, it is necessary for the government that the emergency should be passed by both the houses of parliament by simple majority. And now remember, it is important that both the houses of parliament approve President's rule within 2 months. And even if one of the house says no, then the President's rule cannot be extended beyond the period of 2 months. So President rule can continue for maximum period of 2 months without the approval of parliament. But if both the houses of parliament, remember, see, usually Lok Sabha is more powerful than Rajya Sabha. But when it comes to certain provisions such as removal of president, removal of Supreme Court judge, or during the approval of president's, during the approval of emergency, during these cases, the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha both enjoy equal position. So while approving the national emergency, both the houses of parliament enjoy equal position. So if both the houses approve the President's rule, then the President rule will continue only for 6 months. Yes, the same that we have seen in national emergency. In national emergency, the national emergency will continue only for a period of 6 months once approved by both the houses of parliament. Similarly, in the case of President rule, if both the houses of parliament approves President's rule, then President rule is going to continue only for 6 months. Now suppose 6 months is over, and then government should follow the same procedure. If again both the houses give the nod, then again 6 months, and this procedure should be periodically revised and not revised, it should be approved, but there is a maximum limit to which we can extend the President rule. Remember, the President's rule can be extended in a state for a maximum period of 3 years. In the case of national emergency, what we saw, the national emergency can be extended for indefinite period, subject to periodic approval after every 6 months. But in the case of President's rule, the President's rule can be imposed for a maximum period of 3 years in any state. Punjab is an exception. Because in Punjab, the President's rule continued for around 5 years. Why 5 years? See, 3 years according to the constitution, and after that there were 2 separate constitutional amendment act for extending President rule for 1 year. So that is why in the state of Punjab, because of the 2 constitutional amendment act, the President's rule continued for 5 years. Otherwise, the constitutional duration of President's rule is 3 years. Okay, so this is the procedure for approval of President's rule. But remember, when Morarji Desai came to power, he added 2 conditions which should be followed once the President rule complete 1 year. So after the completion of 1 year of President's rule in a state, the government is required, the 2 conditions should be satisfied. So these 2 conditions were added by the two conditions were added by 44th Constitutional Amendment Act 1978. It means once the, after 1 year of imposition of president's rule, if the government wants that the president's rule should extend for another 6 months, then first these two conditions should be satisfied. Now, what are these two conditions? The first condition is the imposition of national emergency. Imposition of national emergency in India or in the state or any part of it, either in the whole state or any part of the state. So the first condition is, see, many students are not able to understand the first condition. The first condition is imposition of national emergency either in whole India or whole state or any part of the state. We all know that national emergency can be restricted to a particular part of the country. So it is not always that national emergency will apply on the entire country. We can impose national emergency on a part of country. So the first condition is this. Now the second condition is Election Commission has certified that we cannot conduct election to the state legislature. So Election Commission has denied that we cannot conduct election to the legislature of the concerned state. So if both the conditions are satisfied, then only the government can extend president's rule beyond the period of 1 year. So I hope these two conditions are clear, and these two conditions are to be followed only when the president's rule complete 1 year in any state. And these two conditions were added during Morarji Desai government or Janta government. And I'm again going to repeat these two conditions. The first condition is imposition of national emergency in the entire country or whole state or any part of it. And the second condition is the Election Commission has said that we cannot conduct election to the legislature of the concerned state because of some difficulties. Only then we can continue president's rule beyond 1 year. And the maximum limit for imposing president's rule is 3 years. So this was the procedure for imposing president's rule or approval president's rule. So for your examination, what you have to understand, the first point is that in how many months the president's rule should be approved by the parliament. It is 2 months, and we all know in the case of national emergency it was 1 month. So in case of national emergency, both the houses of parliament should approve national emergency within 1 month, but in case of president's rule it is 2 months. Then here both the houses have to pass the president's rule by simple majority, and this part is same, that it continues only for 6 months, and after every 6 months approval of parliament is required, and the president's rule can be extended for a maximum period of 3 years. And we all discussed, and I think I already communicated this, that the Punjab is an exception. In Punjab, the president's rule continued for 5 years because of 2 separate amendments. So, but that was only for that time. If you ask that what will happen today, I'm going to say that even today, the president's rule will continue in Punjab only for 3 years. That was only for that time, not in general. So you should not understand this as a concept that in Punjab president's rule can be extended for 5 years every time. No, at that time the conditions were different. At that time a separate amendment was introduced for this. So at present the point is for 3 years president's rule can be imposed. Okay. Okay, so this is the procedure for approval of president's rule, and now we can start with the procedure for revocation of president's rule. So what is the procedure for revocation of president's rule? See, revocation means to stop president's rule. Revocation means to stop the particular emergency. So now we are understanding what is the procedure to revoke president's rule. So the president's rule can be revoked only by the president. There is no need of parliamentary approval. Remember this. See, in case of national emergency, there were 2 ways to stop national emergency. First was the president, and the second was if Lok Sabha passes the resolution by a simple majority. But in case of president's rule, the second case does not exist. The president's rule can be revoked only by the president, that too without parliamentary approval. Whenever I say that the president can revoke president's rule without the parliamentary approval, it doesn't mean that president is doing this in his own discretion. No, the discretion of president is invalid, unconstitutional. The president is required to revoke president's rule only on the advice of the government, but the written recommendation of the government or written recommendation of the cabinet is again not required in case of revocation of president's rule. Same was in the case of national emergency. So I hope this thing is clear, that how to revoke how to revoke president's rule. So after the completion of the approval and revocation of president's rule, now we can start with the effect of president's rule. And in the last class we have discussed this, that the Punjab was the first state in the country where president's rule was imposed, that too in 1951, and for the maximum number of times the president's rule have been imposed in the state of Manipur for 10 times. Okay, so I think we are done with the reason for imposing president's rule, the approval of president's rule, and the revocation of president's rule. And now we can start with the final part of president's rule, and that is the effect of president's rule. So let us start the effect of president's rule. Effects of president's rule. See, now we should not make this complicated. We can simply write that how the effect will be seen in a particular state. So now understand, for simplicity we can draw a diagram of any state. Suppose this is a particular state of a country, let it be XYZ. Okay, so XYZ is the state of a country, and we all know in all these states there is one thing which is common, and that is the presence of government. No state can exist without government. So we have 28 states, and in all 28 states you will see the government, and this government is democratic in nature. We have discussed this in earlier classes, that the government at the center as well as in the states is democratic in nature. So here you will find a democratic government, and in democratic government you will find three organs of the government. So these organs of the government are common in all these states. So the first organ of the government in any state is legislature. The task of legislature is to make laws. We have discussed this several times. The second is to execute laws. The third is judiciary. Okay, so in any state there are three organs of the government. So be it Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Tripura, Jammu Kashmir. No, not Jammu Kashmir, because Jammu Kashmir is a union territory. We are discussing specifically about the states. So we have 28 states, and in all 28 states you will find these three organs of the government. So now remember, whenever president's rule is imposed on any state, what will be the effect of president's rule? Now remember, whenever president's rule is imposed on a state, then these two organs of the state government comes under the control of center. See, the entire state is not affected during president's rule. There are total three organs of the government, and there is no effect on judiciary. The effect will be on the legislature and executive. So what we can understand, that during president's rule, only the two organs of the government comes under the control of central government, and there is no effect on judiciary. So now, and one more thing, apart from judiciary, there are citizens. So there will be no effect on the citizens of India when the president's rule is imposed. Now why I am saying this, during national emergency our fundamental rights can be suspended. So this can happen during national emergency, that our fundamental rights are suspended. But in case of president's rule, there is no effect on fundamental right. So on judiciary as well as on citizens, there will be no effect. Okay, so fundamental rights are not suspended during president's rule, and there is no effect on judiciary. So the effect is only on the legislature and executive. Now what is the exact effect? So the exact effect is simple. See, who all comes under the executive? In executive you will find chief minister and council of ministers. Chief minister and council of ministers. So see, you should understand there are two types of executive. First is permanent executive, and the second is temporary executive. Permanent executive implies for example, the officers. Officers in the government are part of permanent executive. They are permanent bureaucracy, permanent in nature. They are not removed after every 5 years. So executives are permanent in nature, and permanent executives are usually the officers, whereas the temporary executives are ministers. So chief minister and council of ministers are temporary executive because they are removed after every 5 years, or after every 5 years they need to establish majority in order to continue for another 5 years. So in executive, chief minister and council of ministers, and in legislature we have state legislative assembly. In legislature we have legislative assembly. See, remember, in state legislature there are usually two houses. The first is legislative assembly and the second is legislative council. But in India only 6 states have legislative council and legislative assembly. The remaining 22 states have legislative assembly. There is no legislative council in 22 states because legislative council is a voluntary provision. It depends upon the state whether they want the legislative council or not. So we are not going to discuss that. We will discuss that separately in Article 169 under the chapter State Legislature. But right now we are concerned about that what falls in the legislature. So the legislature consists of legislative assembly in most of the states. We are not going to discuss about the governor because governor is also part of the legislature. But remember, right now we are concerned about the effect of president's rule. So we are not going to discuss about who all comes in the legislature. So now remember, a chief minister and council of ministers form part of executive. Now whenever president's rule is imposed on a state, then what will happen? During president's rule, the president is going to dismiss the chief minister and council of ministers. So now I have started the effect of president's rule. So the first effect of president's rule is the president is going to dismiss the council of ministers. Now the question arises, if the president has dismissed the council of ministers, then who will perform the functions of the executive? See, they were performing some functions, but you have dismissed them. Now who is going to perform the functions of executive? See, the answer is, now ideally this is called president's rule. But suppose president's rule is imposed in 10 different states. We cannot expect president to come or to make laws for each and every state. We cannot really expect from the president. But we all know governor is appointed by the president. So on the behalf of president, governor is going to perform the functions which were performed by chief minister and council of ministers. So during president's rule, president is going to dismiss council of ministers along with chief minister, and now the governor on behalf of the president is going to carry on the administration. So who will run the administration during president's rule? The answer is governor. But governor is not going to do this all alone. Governor with the help of chief secretary of that state. Now who is chief secretary of a particular state? Chief secretary is the highest IAS officer or the highest officer of any state. Okay, at the central level it is the cabinet secretary, whereas in the state it is the chief secretary, and chief secretary or cabinet secretary are usually IAS officers. So on behalf of the president, governor is going to carry on the administration. Governor is going to carry on the administration along with with the help of chief secretary. Okay, remember, chief secretary forms a part of permanent executive. As I said, officers are permanent in nature. I mean, they retire only when their retirement age comes. So other than that, they will continue to hold their office. They will not be removed after 2 years, 3 years or 5 years. They are subject to the removal, but they are not. So I hope this particular thing is clear, that what happens to the executive when the president's rule is imposed. And the answer is simple. They will be dismissed, and the governor on behalf of the president will run the administration along with chief secretary. Okay, chief secretary will assist the governor in running the administration. Now what will happen with the legislature when the president's rule is imposed? Now remember, whenever the president's rule is imposed, what happens with the legislature? The answer is simple. See, two things are going to happen with the legislature. Either legislative assembly will be suspended, either the president is going to suspend the legislative assembly, or the government is going to dissolve, the president is going to dissolve the legislative assembly. Remember, during president's rule, two things are going to happen. Either the legislative assembly will be suspended or it will be dissolved. In any of the cases, remember, the function of the legislative assembly will not be performed by it. Why? Because it has been suspended or dissolved. In both the cases, the function of legislative assembly are to be performed by, so remember, see, what is the function of legislative assembly in general? I'm asking, in general, what is the function of legislative assembly? The answer is simple. The function of legislative assembly is to make laws for the state. Not only laws, to pass budget for the state is also a function of the legislative assembly. So we should understand there are two primary jobs with the legislative assembly. The first job is to enact budget for the state, and the second job is to make laws for the state. Okay, so during president's rule, the legislative assembly is either suspended or dissolved. In any of the case, it is not going to perform its function. So who will make the budget and laws for the state? So during president's rule, the budget and laws of the state are passed by the parliament. So parliament is responsible for passing the laws and budget for the state, but parliament also has the authority to delegate its power to the the president. The parliament can delegate its power to the president during president's rule. And if this happens, then ideally parliament was required to make laws and budget for the state, but the parliament has the authority to authorize the president to make laws and budget for the state. And if this happens, then the president is going to make laws and budget of the state with the help of the members of parliament of that state. Now remember, members of parliament are sitting in the parliament, not in the legislature. Here MLA and MLC are present, whereas MPs are present in the parliament. So I hope this is clear that ideally the parliament should make laws and pass budget for the state, but the parliament has the power to delegate its function to the president, and then president will make laws and budget for the state with the help of the members of parliament of that state. So I think the two things are clear, that what will happen with the executive and what will happen with the legislature, and there will be no effect on judiciary, and along with judiciary there will be no effect on the fundamental rights of citizens. So I think we are done with the effect of president's rule. Let me repeat the entire thing. See, during the effect of president's rule, only the legislative and executive organs of the state government comes under the control of center. It means there is no effect on judiciary, and along with judiciary there will be no effect on the fundamental rights of citizens. So the fundamental rights are suspended only during national emergency. During president's rule there is no effect on fundamental rights. Now what exactly happens with the legislature and executive? So in executives, what will happen? The chief minister along with council of ministers will be will be dismissed, and now the governor on behalf of the president is going to carry on the administration with the help of chief secretary of that state. So this will happen with executive. And now with the legislature, so two things are going to happen with the legislature. Either it is going to be suspended or it is going to be dissolved. Now sometimes students ask this question that, so what is the difference between the suspension and dissolution? Remember, to suspend means so long the president's rule exists in that state, the legislative assembly is suspended, and once the president's rule is revoked, legislative assembly automatically starts functioning. But in the case of dissolution is somewhat permanent in nature. Suppose we have dissolved a legislative assembly, then even after the removal of president's rule, the legislative assembly stays dissolved, and only through elections it can be again started. Okay, so suspend means so long the president's rule exists, it will remain suspended, and once the president's rule is over, it will automatically start functioning. But this is not in the case of dissolution. In the case of dissolution, it can begin only after fresh elections, not just like that. Okay, so the two primary functions of the legislative assembly is to make budget and to pass laws, and both these functions are going to perform by the parliament, or if parliament decides, then the functions will be performed by the president. And whenever the president makes laws for the state, then we call those laws as President's Act. So remember, whenever you hear this term President's Act, what is President's Act? President's Act means whenever the president makes law for the state, then such laws are called as President's Act. So the laws made by the president during president's rule for the state is called as President's Act. So I hope we are done with the effect of president's rule. And now one more thing to remember, there is a very important case related to president's rule, and that case is SR Bomai case. Whenever you hear that the president's rule has been misused, remember there will always be a reference to the SR Bomai case. So SR Bomai case is really very important when it comes to the president's rule. So let us start with the SR Bomai case. See, for your examination, you do not have to read SR Bomai case in detail. Depth is not required for you. So what is SR Bomai case? See, SR Bomai was the Chief Minister of Karnataka, and his government was dismissed without applying the constitutional provision. So his government was dismissed and he was removed from the office of Chief Minister without see, the fact was the governor was Karnataka was ruled by Janata Dal at that time, and at the center there was a different party. So what government did, the central government through the governor imposed president's rule, and it's a long story that certain few legislature of Janata Dal defected, or they said that we are not going to support the SR Bomai government. So because of this, the governor of that state assumed that the chief minister is not in the position to secure majority, and he assumed that since he does not have majority, therefore we can impose president's rule in that state. So without giving opportunity to the chief minister, see, chief minister was saying that I can prove majority in the legislative assembly, but first you give me the opportunity. But the governor was from a different party. Obviously at that time there was a different government, there was a different party in the center and different party in the state. So whenever this happens, there are chances that president's rule will be imposed. So because of this, the governor imposed president's rule. The governor recommended this to the president, that you impose president's rule on Karnataka. Why? Because the chief minister does not have the majority to run the government. But the chief minister was saying at that time, I want the time to prove majority, and I have the number, I have the required MLA to prove majority. But governor didn't listen, and he recommended the imposition of president's rule in Karnataka. So finally what happened? Unlawfully the Karnataka government was removed. So that is why the case name is SR Bomai case, because he challenged the decision of the central government imposing president's rule in the state of Karnataka. So along with the Karnataka, there were many more states. For example, Rajasthan, Himachal Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, then Manipur, Nagaland. There were many more states. Not Manipur, I think it's Mizoram. I'm confused with the name of these states. But apart from Karnataka, there were many more states where the president's rule was imposed. Now the question in front of Supreme Court was to determine whether the president's rule imposed in all these states was constitutional or not. So in SR Bomai case, Supreme Court laid down specific guidelines that when president's rule will be considered as valid and when it will be considered as invalid. So the most important thing in SR Bomai case is that the president's rule is subject to judicial review. The first important thing that you should note down is that in the SR Bomai case, Supreme Court said that president's rule is subject to judicial review. When I say judicial review means to examine that whether the president's rule is according to the constitution or not. Because in our country, many times president's rule is seen or used as a weapon to harass those states where there's a different government other than the central government. Suppose, for example, in the center there is one party and in the state there is another party. So there are high chances that the president's rule can be imposed. But in the SR Bomai case, Supreme Court straight away said that you cannot use president's rule as a tool or a weapon to harass these states. So in this case, Supreme Court said that the president's rule is subject to judicial review. It means we have the authority to examine whether the decision to impose president's rule was as per the provisions of the constitution or was unconstitutional. So the judiciary has the power to examine president's rule, and when I say judiciary, it means both Supreme Court and High Court both have the power to examine whether the president's rule is constitutional or unconstitutional. So this was the most important point in SR Bomai case. Apart from this, Supreme Court also said in this case that federalism is a part of basic structure of the constitution. Federalism is a part of basic structure of the constitution. Remember, tomorrow we are going to start with the basic structure of the constitution, but it is important to remember that in this case, Supreme Court said that federalism is a part of basic structure of the constitution. Now, what is the implication of this? That federalism is a part of basic structure of the constitution. It simply means that we are federal in nature. The constitution has established two governments, one at the center and the other in the states. So the states government derive their authority from the constitution. So central government cannot affect the federal structure of the country by misusing the president's rule. Okay. And one more thing, I forgot to mention this, that in the Constituent Assembly, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar addressed the apprehensions which were raised at the time of the making of the constitution. So many members in the Constituent Assembly pointed that the president's rule can be misused by the central government for its political benefit. So at that time, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar pacified all the members by saying that, yes, we have incorporated the provision of Article 356, but remember, Article 356 will remain dead letter of the constitution. So as per Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Article 356 was supposed to be a dead letter of the constitution. Dead letter of the constitution means that this provision will never be invoked. Okay, so we should remember this. I should have said this in the starting. According to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Article 356 shall remain dead letter of the constitution. Dead letter means that this particular provision will never be invoked. Okay, but the apprehensions were correct. I mean, president's rule has been misused for around 120 or 125 times. Okay. So, according to S.R. Bhome case, federalism is a part of basic structure of the constitution, and imposing president's rule just for political gain is affecting the basic structure, and nothing on this planet, I mean nothing in this country, can affect the basic structure of the constitution. So federalism is a part of basic structure of the constitution. And one more important thing, what the Supreme Court said was that the secularism is also a part of basic structure of the constitution. So in this case, Supreme Court also said about the secularism. Why secularism? Because in the state of Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Himachal Pradesh, president's rule was imposed on the ground that the central government has banned certain religious organization. See, let me be very specific. Central government in 1991 or 1992 banned few religious organization, RSS, Vishwa Hindu Parishad and Bajrang Dal. These religious organizations were banned by the central government because this was the time when Babri Masjid was demolished on, I guess, on 6th of December. So what happened? Fearing that there will be riots across the country, the central government banned these religious organizations. So, but the problem was that the government has banned the RSS, Vishwa Hindu Parishad and Bajrang Dal, but these religious organizations were functioning in the state of Madhya Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh and Rajasthan. And why? Because these states were ruled by BJP. So what happened? These states were under the BJP, and these organizations were functioning without any issue. So what central government did? Central government imposed president's rule on these three states because these three states were violating the secular structure of the constitution. So on the basis of secularism, on the ground of secularism, the president's rule was imposed on these three states. And I hope you understand what was the exact reason for imposing president's rule. It was because these three organizations were not functioning. These three organizations were functioning in those states which were ruled by the BJP, specifically Himachal Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan. So again, the question arises that can this be a reason for imposing president's rule? I mean, these states were functioning. Their functions were against the president's rule. Sorry, their functions were against the secularism. So is it possible to impose president's rule on the ground of secularism? So what Supreme Court said in this case, that yes, it is correct to impose president's rule on the ground of secularism, because secularism is a part of basic structure of the constitution. So any state which is going to perform anti-secularism activities or anti-secular activities, any state which will pursue anti-secular activities is bound to be shall be punished by the president's rule, by the imposition of president's rule. So I think this thing is clear, that in this SR Bomey case, Supreme Court said that president's rule is subject to judicial review, federalism is a part of basic structure, secularism is a part of basic structure, and apart from these points, what else Supreme Court said in the SR Bomey case? We remember SR Bomey case not just because of these points. We also remember SR Bomey case because in this case, Supreme Court laid down detailed guidelines as to when the imposition of president's rule will be legal and when it will be unlawful, illegal. So suppose what happened with the SR Bomey government. SR Bomey, who was the chief minister of Karnataka in somewhere around in 1987-1988, he was dismissed even without the opportunity. SR Bomey was asking that I should get the opportunity to prove majority in the house, but the governor denied. Governor assumed on his own that the chief minister is not in the position to prove majority. So Supreme Court in this case clearly said that the only way to prove majority is on the floor of the house. So from now onwards, if ever this question arises that whether president's rule should be imposed because the government is not in the position to prove majority, then the only way to prove majority in the the only way to prove majority will be on the floor of the house. So this was one of the guidelines issued by the Supreme Court in SR Bomey case. From now onwards, governor cannot assume on his own that the chief minister has lost majority. If you really want to check whether there is majority or not, then check on the floor of the house. And there are many more guidelines issued by the Supreme Court. For example, suppose the chief minister resigned, and so ideally governor should look for another alternative, but only when all the options are lost or exhausted, only then you can impose president's rule. Otherwise you cannot impose president's rule. First of all, you have to search for alternatives, only then you can impose president's rule. I mean, governor can recommend this to the president for imposing president's rule. And I remember that in the last class I have explained this, that it is not necessary for the president to impose president's rule on the recommendation of governor. So the president can impose president's rule even without the recommendation of the governor. So it is not necessary. Okay, so I think we are done with SR Bomey case. See, SR Bomey case is a detailed judgment. Okay, we do not have to study that much for our examination because we are not preparing for civil services. When it comes to civil service examination, then we can understand SR Bomey case in detail. But when it comes to our examination, for example, SSC, railway, here this much depth is not required. That what all guidelines were laid down by the Supreme Court in SR Bomey case. So what we can remember for our examination, that these 3 points are important, that judicial reviews, federalism and secularism. So finally, we can start with the last emergency, and the last emergency is financial emergency. Now the financial emergency is under Article 360 of the Constitution, and remember, this is the only emergency which has not been imposed so far. The only emergency which has not been imposed, in our country. So, but there were chances, especially in 1991. So now financial emergency, and again, in order to understand financial emergency, we will divide our topic into 4 parts. The first will be the reason for imposing financial emergency. The second will be the procedure for approval of financial emergency. Third will be the revocation of financial emergency, and fourth will be the what will be the effect of financial emergency. So first we will start with that why financial emergency is imposed. See, this emergency is not going to take time. Why? Simple. First, the reason for imposing financial emergency is simple. Whenever the financial stability of India or the credit of India is under threat, this is the only reason for imposing financial emergency. We do not have to expand the meaning of this. For our examination, it is simple. The answer is why we impose financial emergency. Financial emergency is imposed whenever the financial stability, or credit of India is under threat. So whenever our financial stability is under threat, then we can impose financial emergency. This is the only reason for imposing financial emergency. You do not have to remember any other thing other than this. So I hope the reason is clear. And now we will start that how to approve financial emergency. So the pattern will be same. We can start how to approve financial emergency. Now listen. What will be the procedure? Suppose we assume we will assume a particular date on 1st of Jan 2026. The government communicated to the president that you impose financial emergency in India. So suppose on this day financial emergency is imposed. Then within 2 months, the financial emergency must be approved by both the House of Parliament, and only when both the House of Parliament approve financial emergency by simple majority, then the financial emergency will continue for how many? For indefinite period. Now remember, there is a difference. While studying national emergency and president's rule, what we understood? We understood that once the national emergency or president's rule is approved, it only continues for 6 months. So once the president's rule is approved, it will continue for 6 months. Once the once the national emergency is approved, it will continue for 6 months. But in the case of financial emergency, there is no such 6 months provision. It means once the financial emergency is approved by both the House of Parliament, it is going to continue for indefinite period. We do not require parliamentary approval in case of financial emergency. Once approved, it will continue so long the government desires. Now, this is the procedure for financial emergency. And now, what about the revocation? So when it comes to the revocation of financial emergency, what will happen? The only way to revoke financial emergency is the president. So the president can revoke financial emergency at any time without the parliamentary approval. And as I said, whenever I say the president can revoke financial emergency without parliamentary approval, it automatically means that the president can do this only on the recommendation of the government and not in his own discretion. Okay. So this is the procedure for revocation of financial emergency. And after this, we can start with the effect of financial emergency. What will be the effects of financial emergency? The first effect of financial emergency will be that the center can issue directions. See, during, in simple words, we can say that during financial emergency, all the financial matters of the states are dealt by the center. Now the center has the authority to give directions to the state as to how they should exercise their powers in financial matters. So all the decisions related to financial matters of any state are under the control of the center. So now during financial emergency, the center can issue directions to the states regarding these directions can be pertaining to, for example, reducing the salaries and allowances. So the central government can direct the state government to reduce the salaries and allowances of their government employee, okay, of state employees. It automatically means state government employees, okay, not about the private sector. So the center can issue direction asking the states to reduce the salary and allowances of their state government employee. The center can also issue directions that the salaries and allowances of central employee, salaries and allowances of central government employee, should be reduced, okay, including judges of Supreme Court and High Court. So remember, during financial emergency, the salaries of Supreme Court and High Court judge is also affected. Okay, so in simple way, during the financial emergency, the center can issue directions to the states that you please reduce the salaries and allowances of your government employees, and such direction can also extend to reducing the salaries and allowances of the central government employees. So in other words, the salaries and allowances of both the central and state government can be reduced. Okay, it all depends upon the government, central government. And one more thing that will happen during the financial emergency, and that will be that the president can issue directions to the governor of the states that you should reserve the money bill for my consideration. So during financial emergency, the governor are required the governors are required to reserve money bill for the consideration of the president. So one more thing that is going to happen during the financial emergency is that all the governors of the state are required to reserve the state money bill, for the consideration of the president. For the consideration of the president. So I hope this thing is clear, that what will be the effect of financial emergency. I think it's simple. The salaries of central government and state government employees will be affected, including judges of Supreme Court, High Court, and the governors are required to reserve the state money bill for the consideration of the president. And in general words, we can simply say that now all the financial matters of state governments are taken by the central government. Okay, now the central government will decide what state should do in financial matters. Okay, under normal circumstances, central government does not interfere in the functioning of the state, but in the case of a financial emergency, it is definitely going to interfere. Okay, so with this we are done with the financial emergency, and now we can make a chart. With this chart, we will understand that what is the difference between all three emergency, especially about their approval. Now remember, see, first we can make a table. Okay, now see, now what will happen? For approving national emergency, how many months are required? 1 month is required for approving national emergency. For presidential, it is 2 months, and for financial emergency, it is 2 months. We all know that within 1 month, national emergency should be approved by the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, but for presidential and financial emergency, it is 2 months. Then second, in national emergency, special majority is required for approving the national emergency. But in case of presidential, simple majority is required for approving presidential. Similarly, in case of financial emergency, simple majority is required. So again, this is a difference. And now third, once approved, financial emergency only continues for 6 months. Sorry, once approved, national emergency continues only for 6 months. Same is the case with presidential, 6 months. But in case of financial emergency, it is for indefinite period. Now fourth, there is no maximum time period for national emergency. I mean, it can continue for indefinite period. Indefinite period. The presidential can continue only for maximum period of 3 years, and here again indefinite period. Indefinite period. And now remember, when it comes to revocation of national emergency, there are two ways to revoke national emergency. First is the president will be able to do this, and second is if Lok Sabha passes the resolution by simple majority. So there are two ways to revoke national emergency, but in the case of presidential, there is only one way to revoke presidential, and that is the president. And same is the case with financial emergency. The only way to revoke financial emergency is the president acting on the advice of central government. So I think finally we are done with the comparison of all the three emergencies. Now see, you can understand how the time period for approving national emergency is 1 month, whereas for other two it is 2 months. National emergency should be approved by special majority, but in the case of other two emergency, it is simple majority. Once approved, national emergency continues only for 6 months. It will also continue only for 6 months, but it will continue for indefinite period. There is no maximum time period for national emergency, but there is maximum time period for presidential, and there is no maximum time period for financial emergency. There are two ways to revoke financial emergency. The first is the president, and the second is if Lok Sabha passes the resolution by simple majority. And in the case of presidential, there is only one way to revoke a presidential, and that is the president. And the third, the same is with the financial emergency. Only the president can revoke financial emergency on the advice of the central government without the parliamentary approval. Okay, so finally we are done with the emergency provisions. So whatever we have discussed in this chapter, I think total 3 classes. I took total 3 classes for emergency provision. So even if you are preparing for any government examination other than the civil service examination, because in civil services more is required Okay, so other than civil service examination, and even for civil service prelims, this will be sufficient. Okay, so finally we are done with the emergency provision, and tomorrow we will be starting with the basic structure of the constitution. It is the basic structure in which we will be studying different cases, especially Kesavan Bharati case, Golaknath case, Minerva Mills case. These all are famous cases. Okay, so we will understand that what was the story behind these cases, what was the response of the government, what Supreme Court said in this case. Okay, what is the implication of all these cases. So okay, so thank you everyone. So we will meet tomorrow, same timing, 8:30 to 9:30, and tomorrow we will discuss about the basic structure of the constitution. So thank you everyone.